Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, CesarRespino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, CesarRespino, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Alina Timofeeva. How are you, Alina?
I'm very good. Thanks a lot for inviting me today.
Great. I'm glad to have you here. And before we dive in, I want to just introduce you to our audience so they know who you are and some of the things that you're working on. Alina is a multi-award-winning professional in digital topics, having won 7 awards just in 2021. Her recent TEDx Talk, Fail But Never Give Up, reached top 10 TEDx Talks of December 2021. She's a first-generation immigrant from Russia who went through the eye of a needle to move to the UK and fulfill her dreams. Today, she's an associate partner at Oliver Wyman, a consulting top financial service firms globally as an expert in digital, cloud, and data. Outside work, Alina actively gives back to the community through supporting migrants and females in diverse cultural and social backgrounds. Wow, that's definitely amazing. And I'm always intrigued to listen and hear what people have done and are doing in their current life. Yet I'm also interested to learning specifically the fact that you are first generation. I want to know more about your upbringing and how was that for you growing up as a child?
Yeah, I guess I was brought up in Russia. So I was brought up by my grandmother. I actually never lived with my parents, which is quite unusual as a starting point. I was living in Solntseva. So probably nobody knows what Solntseva is, no. But it's the most mafia part of Russia. So it was particularly very bad in the 90s when I was born. And basically it just had a lot of crime, poverty, and just all the general stuff you see in movies, I guess. Mm-hmm. So my grandmother, she was like a simple upbringing. So she didn't really have any education, and she was very keen for me to become a housewife. She was very keen for me to, have a husband who's not drinking and worship that husband and bring him slippers and cook for him. And there was no real, aspirations, or there were no real, she didn't think that I'm going to go and become an associate partner in Oliver Wyman or win awards or something like that. So to make it very simple, she taught me like basic stuff in terms of reading, writing. I went to like a very normal school. I was good in maths. I won the Moscow Olympiad in maths when I was quite young, and this gave me a ticket to go to Moscow State University, which is the best university in Russia. And it kind of helped. But I guess in the eyes of my grandmother, she was like, the ratio of guys to girls is 50-1, so you are definitely going to get married, and then you're going to find a husband, and he's going to be a great educated husband from this Moscow State University. So it's quite an unusual upbringing, perhaps, because it's quite a simple, background.
Yeah. So talking about that, and again, just because I definitely like to build a little bit of content on that, what's the reason that you didn't grow up with your parents?
So my father didn't acknowledge me as his daughter. So when I was born, he actually divorced my mother and he went away, and I've never met him. So again, this is quite unusual because I've literally never met my father. And my mother, she was sick, so she basically just gave me to my grandparents.
Got it. Did that had any kind of impact on you, or did that created any kind of
Yes.
childhood memories? And the only reason I'm saying is like I grew up with my grandmother too, and I see that a lot in different people, right? I never met my biological father. To this day, I have never met him. Do not know his name. I don't know anything about this guy, right? And I grew up with my grandmother too. Obviously, my reasons were different. Where my mom migrated from Mexico and left me behind with my grandmother, and for several years. Then I did, except as a kid. And as you know, between the ages of 0 to 8, what you experience during that period of time, you know, unless you work on those inside mental aspects of your life, they will show up with you down the line, right? And so a lot of things that happen between that age can really determine and create your future, and create the things you want to do, and how that can impact your life, right? And so I wanted to see how that, obviously you're doing really good, yet how was that journey for you, not having your parents, being with your grandmother, and just growing up in that environment?
Well, one of the things in my mind was that I want to achieve many things and I want to impress my parents, and my parents are going to come and pat me on the back, but that didn't really happen. So I won many Olympiads and many awards. Even when I was a kid, I was very good at school, but I guess I wanted to always achieve something, but nobody really came back to say yes, you were such a wonderful daughter. So that was kind of one of the outcomes. The other one, I did get adopted, but I got adopted when I was almost 18. So it didn't really make a huge, difference in my life. And the reason for it is because my father kind of said that he doesn't even want to be my father on paper. So I had to find somebody else to officially become my father. So I had to change like my surname, my name, and my second name as well at that point in time, which was again quite unusual.
Yeah. And so obviously going through that, living with your grandmother, not being recognized by your father, then being adopted, how did that, at that point when you went to college, going to college and having the idea of, I want to do this, what you're doing right now is what you study, or that was just one of those things where I know oftentimes, at least here in America, the idea is, get a good education, graduate, and then get a good job and kind of live your life until you die, right? That's kind of like the model, right? Was that the same thing for you over there?
So in Russia, it's a little bit different. So basically, because of the 90s, there was a lot of mismatch. So many people who used to, be very good, like professors, they ended up being not really well paid. And then you would have heard about the oligarchs, who perhaps used to be like plumbers, like Abramovich, and then gained a lot of money. So there was not necessarily such a link that if I go and I study hard, I'm going to become super good, I'll get a good job, etc., etc. One of the other things in Russia as well, it's quite hard to find a good job, because what they say, you will get it either if you know somebody or your parents know somebody, or you work with your family and with your parents, or with your, somebody who and then you're going to get like money and you're going to be fairly successful. In my case, I didn't really know anyone. So surprisingly, my first job when I was quite young, I used to wash floors in McDonald's, because that was the job I could get from the street. And it did have an impact on me, because it was a lot of manual work and quite low salary. I think I used to get paid about 50 pence an hour, which is quite low even for Russia.
Right.
And I guess the thing for me, I didn't quite know what I want to do. I was very, very sure from quite an early age that I don't want to live in poverty, and I was living in poverty with my grandmother. I was quite happy to think about any different ways of how not to live in poverty, and there are different thought some girls in Russia, they want to become models because they want to go to Moscow and they want to get married well, and then their life becomes potentially better. Some people kind of study and it sometimes brings some money and sometimes it doesn't. Some people are good in their job, right, and they prosper. So I didn't have like a very clear path. I just wanted to move away from where I was living, and I was quite open to options.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a lot of times, it's interesting, right? How sometimes our current environment can dictate the type of direction we're going to take. And this morning I was talking to some people and I was doing a quick message, and sometimes the choices and the decisions that we make today will determine the quality of life that we have tomorrow. And so sometimes we gotta be able to reflect and think about those things, right? And in your case, like, well, I knew I didn't want to be there anymore. Whatever that's gonna lead me, that was a decision you made, which led you to kind of be who you are now, right? And so let's talk about that, because obviously you've had so many awards that you received in 2021. June, just this year, seven awards. How did that come about? I mean, how did you build up to where you are now? What was that journey for you?
I mean, it was obviously not something which happened overnight. So, I mean, one of the things, as I said, I did start working in McDonald's, and the funny story there was there are different corporate levels in McDonald's as well. Like, you start from washing floors, then you do doing fries, then you do doing burgers, then you do something else, right? Then you become a manager, then you become a director. So what was funny is I started with my washing of the floors. I got promoted to doing the fries. I never got promoted to doing the burgers. And then I kind of quit because I didn't see the point.
Yeah.
But funnily, the guy who used to head that particular franchise, he was like, one day you're going to be a director of McDonald's, just like me, because I also started by, washing floors and pulling like all the heavy stuff. And now, see, after 10 years, I made a director. And that was like a very memorable experience in terms of the corporate ladder. But anyway, I was in Russia. I was studying. I was okay at university. I wouldn't say I was like the top star, partially because I wasn't super interested because it was quite theoretical. But most of the people at university were like people that won the World Olympiad in maths, or like really, really very smart people. So that was kind of a good environment generally. I applied to very many jobs in UK. I first wanted to go to US because there is this thought about the American dream, and it is in the heads of the Russian people as well. There were some complications in terms of how you get the work permit in US, and just generally how you can get like a junior job without knowing anyone. So UK sounded like a better option because there was at least some potential of me getting something. And the story was, I worked unlimited hours in Russia doing audit in PwC, which is a Big Four. And I applied to really, really, really very many jobs in UK. Like, I applied online. I didn't obviously know anyone. I applied just like any normal person. And I used to fly a lot for different interviews. Usually those were like tier 1 jobs in banks, investment banks, audit companies, consulting, etc., etc. But one of the problems was I was consistently getting rejected at different points in time. And I think I applied to about 500 jobs, maybe more, I don't remember. But I ultimately got 497 rejections, which is a lot of rejections.
Wow.
And then I landed up on 3 offers after a long period of time, I would say.
Yeah.
And then what happened, what was quite funny, the work permit was very hard because at that point in time, Russia decided to invade Crimea, and basically they closed all the embassies around giving the visa, and generally the situation was very unstable. So I had to, again, kind of come up with more creative options of getting this work permit and finally coming to UK. And I guess when I came, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have like any relocation costs covered. So I just turned up. I had another rejection of a visa before that to go to India, which was funny. And when I turned up, I was just the only person who was an immigrant out of 100 people who they hired that intake.
Yeah. Wow. And one thing that I probably could only imagine, right, going through all of these different things, one of the biggest obstacles that you had to deal with in your life and in overcoming was accepting your own individuality, right? Tell me more about that. How was that for you? Obviously, accepting who you are and your individual self to be able to keep moving forward, right?
Yeah. So when I joined, and that was kind of a pivotal moment. So I was the only person who was not from UK, and I very much stood out. I stood out in terms of how I talk, how I walk, how I behave, what I say, how I say it, in terms of my accent, in terms of how I dress up. So I was very frustrated about it in the start, because I'll be very honest, I don't think anyone in my start group would ever have thought that I would have made so far quite quickly. And I tried to fit in. Like, there were funny stories that I didn't know how to answer. How are you? How was your weekend? Like, I would just tell everything what happened in my weekend, starting with all the problems that I got kicked out from accommodation, or somebody didn't pay me or something like that. And I think for the first year, 2 years, I was quite unhappy and quite miserable, because I didn't fit into the job, and I didn't necessarily have, like a stable place to live and stable kind of understanding of what I'm going to do next. The accepting individuality came at the point when I just thought that there was no point of me being like a British person specifically, because I have like my own style of how I work, how I talk, how I behave. And that was a very interesting realization, because it did enable me to move much faster. And when I changed an employer to another company, KPMG, I think I again kind of stood out, but more in a positive way.
Got it. So it was really embracing the fact that, if I understood that properly, it was probably also embracing the idea that you were not so worried about what other people were thinking of you. Is you are your own self. You have to accept who you are as the person you are. Obviously, realizing and knowing definitely your boundaries and or how to act in certain aspect, right? At the end of the day, though, you're not trying to be somebody else that you're not, right?
Yes. So I think I did ultimately, become better in terms of the cultural fit, in terms of soft skills. And I did do a lot of stuff in terms of adapting, like looking how people talk, walk, behave, etc. But I still remained the same person who's quite straightforward, and I guess with slightly different style than perhaps some of my peers.
Yeah. So I have this idea of, my highest intention. A lot of people can refer it to as, what is your mission? What is your vision or mission? What is it that you're trying to do in this world, right? Obviously, you've led to having won 7 awards, and you've done so many different things. And so what was the idea behind you wanting to be on a TEDx Talk? Which obviously that's something that it's amazing, because it's seen by many different people all over the world. And so first I want to talk about what led to you to wanting to be on a TEDx Talk, and then I want to talk about the actual TEDx Talk.
Okay, cool. I mean, originally my whole life started by just surviving. So I was just very interested in, earning money and just having physical items. And I think I grew from that concept to kind of more like empowering others, mentoring others, etc., etc. So one of the things about TEDx Talk is it was something very unusual. I've never spoken publicly. I won an award. I won my first award, and somebody called me from Russia. And basically they said, oh, it's so unusual that a Russian person won an award in UK in technology. We are holding this first ever biggest conference of women leaders, and we need like somebody young to come and inspire many people. So they said 130,000 people. That's a lot of people. And they invited different people like the Minister of Economy, the Minister of this, the Minister of that. And I was basically this younger person who achieved some success. And they obviously thought that I'm very, very good in public speaking, because of course I won the award. That's why I definitely do it like every day. And they said, please come next week give us like a TEDx talk in Russian about how you went from washing floors in McDonald's to winning in the award in UK in like 7-10 years or something like that. And I said, okay.
Wow.
And I turn up, and one of my complications was that the story was very good. The script was very good. Like, I can be quite entertaining, and the people were interested. One of the complications, I haven't spoken in Russian for 7 years. I have developed very bad accents when speaking Russian, which was in a way quite cool and quite interesting. Number two, I was very, I felt very awkward, even though it was on Zoom. It wasn't physically seeing people.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the lady who introduced me, she did like half of the story. So the whole idea of the wonderful TEDx talk kind of went away.
Yeah.
And then the timing of the talk also, it moved basically to a different slot. It moved earlier rather than later. And in the end, I've never rewatched it. I don't know. I've seen that many people said, oh, that's so inspirational, etc., but I felt very discomfortable. And then I thought, oh, it would be so good for me to develop public speaking. And so I went to my boss in my company and said, please pay for my public speaking. And he said, no, I can't spend 90% of my budget on your public speaking, because public speaking in UK is quite expensive, to be honest. Okay. And he said, please do something yourself. So I basically started doing a lot of podcasts because people were interested in the story, but I just wanted to develop my public speaking to be more confident. I had a couple of coaches in Russia because that was a bit cheaper and more economic. And I kind of got this confidence of talking on different topics. And I do talk either on empowerment or the digital topics. And now the next step was the TEDx. So I thought, how do I become a TEDx speaker? And it's very unusual because there wasn't anyone who came to me and said, Alina, please do a TEDx talk. I had to look at every single TEDx talk in UK, like on the website. And basically, you can see who's the organizer. So I went, found them on LinkedIn and said, I want to talk in your TEDx talk. And here is my list of things I can talk about. And this is why it's important. And this is why it's me, etc., etc. So basically, it was about 50 to 80 events. And I think out of 50 to 80 events, all of them either declined me or they didn't respond to me, or they said, we want somebody else, or they said, we already have somebody covering this, or they said, we have a completely different topic about food, for example, and we don't want to. So I was like, okay. Basically, I kept applying, as I always tend to do. And then there was one TEDx that said, okay, you can come and talk, but it doesn't have any people. So it's like TEDx Studio. You can do it at any point in time. You can, if you want, do it like as an organized studio type of thing, when they give you like a carpet and all the background with it. But you have no people, so it all goes to the same platform, but nobody, laughs when you tell a story. So it was quite, And then I found TEDx Bedford, which was the one where I ultimately did TEDx. They did have the physical people. They did accept me, which was nice. And then on the day of the talk, it was quite funny. Because first of all, I turn up and my first phrase is, I'm a failure. Because the talk is about failures and how you go through failures and you don't give up.
Fail but never give up. Yeah, fail but never give up, right?
Yes. So I start, I'm a failure, right? And the microphone is not working. So I'm like, clearly I'm a failure because you can't even hear what I'm saying. And basically the audience laughed. And then, I'm not going to talk about the whole talk, but it was quite interesting to see that people, relate to your story, or they laugh when you feel they could laugh, or, they clap, etc., etc. And then it did come on YouTube last week. And basically in the first day, it got 22,000 views. One of the interesting thing about TEDx talks, which most people don't know, is a lot of TEDx talks, about 75% of them only get 500 to 1,000 views. Because they do go to the platform, you do send them to your, friends and family, and it all kind of dies quite quickly, which is why a lot of TEDx talks are not actually watched unless they're done by a celebrity. And there are only like a few which kind of go beyond the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, etc. So when I got on the first day 22,000, I was quite happy.
Yeah. So
And
how long was your TEDx talk? Normally, what's the time frame that you get to speak?
so officially the guideline is 18 minutes. I spoke for 12. They recommend, because it goes on YouTube, to do within like 10-15 minutes, just because people who are going to watch it, it's harder for them to watch 18 minutes. And the whole idea is you need to make it easier for people to understand. So I added a few jokes, or like I tried being more entertaining rather than just saying something.
Yeah, so that's very interesting to see, you know, and again, that's definitely a skill by itself, just being able to take, you know, even your topic, fail but never give up, right? Be able to deliver a message within that short of a period of time of why you might have been a failure, but yet you never gave up. And one of the things that I keep hearing from you is that if you never gave up, you apply to so many different jobs, you apply to so many different TED Talks, you've done all of this very consistency. So beyond obviously the obvious of you keep pushing in the tenacity, where did that come from? Where did you learn that? Where did you get, maybe the more than anything, where do you get that drive to say, you know what, I'm getting so many no's, yet I'm not going to allow that feeling, that rejection to say, you know what, then just give up and forget about it, because you didn't, right? You keep going. So how do you turn that rejection into power for you to continue to push through? Because that's one thing that I believe many people, including those that are watching us right now, might be going through that, might be seeing that I'm like, you know what, I applied to a job 3-4 times, I'm not getting that job. I asked that guy or that girl to go out on a date with me, and they don't want to go, and they gave up on the 4th or 5th time, right? But here we're talking about, you know, 300, 400, 500 times. How do you keep moving forward on that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it comes from experience. I do get frustrated just like any normal human being. I do have this track record of, unless I try, nobody comes to me and gives me on a golden plate anything. So I do keep going, but I did have, certain hesitations, I guess, when I was looking for a job, that I'm not potentially good enough. But just everybody told me, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. Stop trying. Just forget about it. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
I need to start and continue. But it is quite a painful process. And I think most of the people who I personally know, people do give up after, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Right. I think what's important about my topic in TEDx Talk as well is the message about failing or never failing is quite typical. I really wanted to talk about it from the eyes of an immigrant, because whilst I think many people talk about women in business, women in technology, I don't think the topic of immigrants is so well described at the moment. And I don't think that there is understanding, first of all, from the eyes of the actual people that live in the country, how immigrants feel. Right. And secondly, in the eyes of the immigrants, of how much they could do, really. Yeah.
And the other thing too that you talk about, which I think is pretty interesting, is, and I want you to really elaborate on that, because a lot of times people see it as a negative thing or a negative connotation. And you talk about failure is an opportunity to grow. And I definitely believe in that. Yet again, time after time, many people might see failure as a failure. I see failure as a lesson. I see failure as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to look at what are some of the lessons. And so if you can elaborate more on that message, because again, a lot of people don't see beyond that failure, and then they give up, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest, if I gave up in terms of not finding a job in 2014, I would probably not have come to UK, not have won my 7 awards, and not have done my TEDx talk. But I guess I fail. I fail pretty much every day in some way, right? And I think the opportunity to grow is just the thing how much you push yourself. So, I mean, if I didn't push myself out of my little area in Sonsua, I would probably have stayed there, got married, and lived in a, I don't know, cheap flat, I guess, or
Right.
even worse, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could have failed even before I started doing my education stuff. I mean, one of the things which I think is quite important for like all the human beings is just to think about, you know, however badly you failed, you are still, you know, a good individual, like a good person. So it's not only, you know, what other people see potentially, but also how you feel yourself. So like in my case, I still do get frustrated about failures, and I do, you know, get sad for a couple of hours, but then I have this concept. It's called a diary of achievements, but basically you go like through a little book in terms of I achieved this, I achieved this, I achieved this, and it kind of helps.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of it too. And I actually want to tap into that. My next question is really more about that. I think there's a difference, right? And the difference is here that, as you mentioned, you know, you are a human being. A lot of the people that are in this space of motivating or being able to inspire people, they are human beings, and there are times that they do get frustrated. There are times that they still you know, are not happy with the outcome of whatever that might have been, that challenge that they're having. Yet the difference between maybe someone like you or I is that we might see something from a different lens, a different perspective, whereas other people may not have the right tools, or perhaps have not gone through the right type of teachings to be able to maneuver and deal with those failures or those objections or those challenges, right? And so to me, it comes down to the mindset, comes down to working on your inner self, right, to be able to take care of the outer self. There's an African proverb that I really like, and it says, when there's no enemy within, there's no enemy outside that can do you no harm. And so the idea behind that is that when you work on your mindset and you're at ease and you're okay and content with everything is going on inside yourself, then really the outside world is not going to impact you. It doesn't matter if it's the pandemic, or it doesn't matter if it's, you know, that job left you, because that meant that maybe another opportunity opened. So having that said, and the way you see things in that framing, how do you see things, and or what have you done to work on your mindset, on your thoughts, on your mentality, to say, you know what, yeah, there's obstacles, and I call them challenges. There are challenges, and yet I'm going to deal with those challenges. I'm going to deal with what emerges, and I'm going to be able to move ahead from that.
Yeah, I mean, I went through different cycles of this. Originally, it started with the fact that everybody was telling me how horrible I am and I'm not going to be successful, and I wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people used to tell me that apparently I'm very ugly, and I'm also very bad with public speaking, and I can't find a job in the UK, and many other things. So I did want to prove them wrong. That was my first thing. The second thing, which I think...
Before we go there, because I love what you just said. I think that's golden. So obviously people were saying all these different things, whatever that might have been. And I forget, I think it was this guy named Les Brown. He said, somebody else's opinion about you is not your reality. So you didn't make that be your reality. You said, I'm going to prove them wrong, because that is their thoughts. That's what they think, is not what I believe, which comes down to, obviously, I'm going to prove them wrong and I'm going to do something different, right?
Yeah, so that was how I dealt with it in the start. Yeah. I mean, as I got older and wiser, there is something which I discovered. So it's called Vipassana. Vipassana is more of a meditation. I mean, it comes from India, but it's not specific to a religion or to anything. And what they try to help you do is to train your mind to be equanimous. So basically, you do it not just by logically understanding, you know, like I failed, didn't fail, whatever happened, but it's more on your body level, that you look, you observe your body, or they call it sensations on your body. But to make it very simply, you need to be equanimous to what happens. So if something happens like very bad, you don't get super frustrated. If something happens very good, you don't get super excited. So in the end, you kind of have this equanimity in your, well, both the body and the mind, and you kind of learn from it. So I found that that was a very good technique. I think I'm still on a journey of, generally working for it, but I've seen quite a few people benefit from it just generally.
Right. I believe that, at least my point of view is that you never never stop learning. I think that people that are in this journey of uh, entrepreneurship, this journey of empowering, motivating, inspiring people, I believe that this is a lifetime experience. And for me, I know for me at least, I know that I'm going to continue to learn from people like you, people that come on my podcast, everything that I do. You can constantly continue to learn. And that's, I think, the beauty of life is that experience of learning. There's those ups and downs, those peaks and values. And so definitely going through those motions can help you become a better person, yet even better, which is what you're doing too, is be able to share that with other people and give back to the community, or give back to people in such a way as you have done in everything you're doing now, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, one of the important things for me, so when I came to UK, I had a thought in my mind that as an immigrant, I'm a tier 2 person. Nobody wants me here. Why did I come here? And however much resilient I was, I genuinely thought that that's the case, because I haven't seen any other, physical immigrants that I personally knew or I personally watched or heard that kind of turned up and did something good or became successful. And I think one of the important things for me is just making sure in your mind, just being more confident that it is possible. And, as long as you make an effort, ultimately, despite all the failures, it will become possible. It's just a question of, well, partially the time, partially the resilience, partially the mindset.
Right. And I think that's a big one too, right? That for sure. Let me ask you this. So obviously you've done so many things. You have won different awards. The things that you're doing right now, is this for specifically to companies, or you actually offer any of your services to individuals?
So at the moment, a lot of my mentoring I do for non-profit. So I work with charities. One of them is Migrant Leaders. The other one is that there are quite a few, but basically there are two types of charities. One is more aimed of helping women in business, women in technology, and the second one is aimed at helping immigrants. And sometimes there's, of course, an overlap. I guess in terms of my day-to-day job, I do consulting for digital, so I still do it as I would normally do it, and I still have quite a lot of work to do. I think all my mentoring is kind of additional stuff on top of it, and I really enjoyed it both ways, because I do feel, there is the mentoring element in terms of helping others, but there is also the thing when the others do get the benefit out of it, they give you back some positive energy, and it kind of helps you longer term as well. So I was quite happy that I started doing it.
So Alina, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so the best place for me is LinkedIn, because I do respond to it quite quickly. I do use Instagram, but I think LinkedIn is just a better way.
Okay. And then if people wanted to see your TEDx talk, they can find that on YouTube. And then the awards that you won, are they specific to your industry in digital, or what are they about?
Yeah, so the awards are usually, well, basically it's either a role model in financial services, or it's digital leader of the year, or it's cloud thing. So it's a mix, I would say. I mean, just today I was actually published in a book of top 50 women of UK in the business.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a bit of a mix. I guess it started with a rising star, then it moved to role model, then it moved to leader.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I guess on TEDx Talk, so maybe there will be a link on the podcast as well.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely have that, so people can actually see that, and they can go watch the talk. I have two more questions for you before I let you go. Number one, I'm curious to know. Obviously, you've come through this major journey, from growing up to where you're at now. Did you do you do any kind of daily habits? Do you have any kind of daily habits to kind of set you in this positive state of mind day in and day out that you want to share with us?
I mean, I do wake up as every normal person. I started thinking more in terms of the positivity, in terms of the day, that the day is going to be positive, and the fact that I need to be grateful for X, Y, and Z, and here are the good things which I've achieved. I think I'm still on my path, so I'm not necessarily doing it every single day, but I think it generally helps in terms of the mindset, and just generally, if you fail, it kind of helps you add up to all the good stuff which happened in your life. So that's number one. Number two, I do try to practice Vipassana, which is what I mentioned about the equanimity of the mind, which is more of a technique, right? And I guess number three, I just try to be a good human being and help other people. And well, I guess if they're happy, I'm happy as well.
Good. Definitely, I think, you might, agree with me on this, that, I think one of the key elements for us to be able to continue to move ahead and succeed and just get 1% better is to create some sort of habits, whatever that might be, because everybody has different habits, right? Except create some positive habits that can help us become that 1% better than who we were yesterday. And I think that's probably a missing component on many people's lives, where, they tend to be on this very routine type of lifestyle, where sometimes it doesn't really serve a purpose, right? And so I know for me, when I started my journey many years ago, I inducted reading, exercising, meditation, affirmations, different things that now have helped me really build upon that positive mindset, right? So that definitely think that's something huge. The last question I have for you is, for the people that are watching us and are listening to us, if they are going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one or a few things you can say so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Yeah, well, I guess, as you mentioned, that failure is an opportunity to grow. So that's number one. But I think number two, in which I really personally believe, is don't wait, for an inspiration. Don't wait for somebody to come to you, tap you on the shoulder, tell you how magnificent you are, or, tell you here is an award for you, or here is this, here is that. I guess just get up from your sofa and, start taking action. I do personally believe in the power of action. And I think that the fact that at times, well, in fact, in most of the cases, I was proactive in doing something, it led to me achieving the outcomes I wanted to achieve. Even though in some of the cases it took a lot of failures, and in some of the cases it took a lot of rejections. But I think this actual, action, this really helped me.
Yeah, and I think part of that, it comes down to the idea of some action is better than not action. I know sometimes we're like, well, we want to understand all of the data and understand all of the components, and sometimes it's not about having all of it. It's just having enough to be able to get started and taking some action now, right? So definitely, I think that's a good point there, and I appreciate that for sure.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share with us?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, Alina, thank you so much for being here today at the show. Really appreciate all of the things that you've shared in the knowledge. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you guys connect with Alina on LinkedIn. I'll be posting the TEDx Talk link, so you go ahead and check out that video. And do me a favor, share this message, because somebody has to hear this message. And I'll definitely see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm CesarRespino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform, where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.